Hi folks, Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio radio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the areas of the planet that are going through insane levels of population explosion. It's from these overpopulated areas where there is a surplus population, it's from those areas uniquely, if not exclusively, where the mass migration to the West is coming from. So it's a globalist organised, all the infrastructure to move these people from there into the West is all globalist, arranged, organised and funded, whether they do it directly, whether it's through the United Nations, whether it's through the NGOs or through people smugglers they're illicitly funding through the back door. It doesn't matter, but the globalists are behind it, moving these people. But I just want to sort of give some sort of concept of the scale of this. So 200,000 extra people are born to the planet every day, and this is net new births. So you subtract deaths, and this is a net amount of new people, new mouths to feed. That after all the deaths have been subtracted. So a little bit more than that actually, but assume 200,000 a day. So that's quite a lot. As new mouths coming into the world. That's 1 million extra people every 5 days, of course. So now it's overwhelmingly that they're being born into the already overpopulated, already starving, already illiterate peasant areas of the world, and not being born in the white Western countries. If you look at say the population of minus mass migration, if you look at the population of say somewhere, Britain, Germany, France, that sort of thing, their populations have really, since say 1970, have been relatively stable. They've been sort of up and down a little bit here and there, but nothing much. And there's a slight increase in the number of people, but that's mainly because folks are living longer rather than there's extra births. And if you look at the trend of births, it's been going downhill. Now you could track the decline of birth rates with the increase in the cost of living and the globalist, the early globalist attempts to get women into the workforce, to reduce wages and to increase consumption of consumer goods and to increase the use of credit. Women are far more careless with credit than men generally. So this was so without mass migration, the populations would have remained fairly stable. Now, Western governments could have done a lot to increase the birth rate if they wanted. There were policies in Australia, for example, where if you were a stay-at-home, mum with children, depending on the amount of children you had, the income earner, the dad, would get a much lower tax rate. So, and I remember this irritated me when I was a younger guy, when I sort of started to move up into the executive level type employment. There's a guy that I made quite a bit more than he did, and then when I got elevated to the level, I had to sign off on his. Well, he got some sort of pay thing, some change in his pay. I looked at it, and he had 3 or 4 children, and he made a good 25-30% less than I did, but his take-home pay was more because he had all these children. I was a single guy at the time, and I was outraged by this. I thought it was unfair. But today I look at it and say, well, no, that's fair enough. He's got a dependent wife and children, and why not? So there was a lot of tax incentives. Those got gradually removed over time, but this did encourage, not so much encourage, but it made it possible for people to have a number of children, and that was a good thing for the country, I thought. But anyway, coming back to this idea of declining birth rates, that you can track the introduction of women into the workforce, and B, the reduced purchasing power of the paycheck. If you plot those on a chart or graphically plot them, then it mirrors almost exactly the decline in the birth rate. Now, it does mirror, there are places like Italy, for example, where it didn't track exactly in that same way. So there are some exceptions, but certainly across the advanced Western world, as in Britain, Canada, and America, those sort of things, Germany and the like, France, that decline stayed pretty clear, and only when generous unemployment benefits and family support benefits started to be offered did you find there was increased procreation amongst the welfare dependent classes. So they were having more children because their income earning capacity was so low that by procreating they could actually live a better quality of life than if they went out to work. So there was that, but that's not necessarily good for any society. And there are also a lot of single mums around that time, and getting pregnant to entrap a guy into marriage was considered very much something that women did. It was quite accepted at the time that was what you did. And if the guy wasn't the guy that was the biological sort of father, who cares? That you just say, I'm pregnant, it was you. And that creates the shotgun wedding type environment, which is widespread. And there was also a very large foster child environment at the time, because not all guys would go for that. They go, well, hold on a minute. I know for a fact you had 3 or 4 different boyfriends on the go at the same time. How do you know it's me? And she would say, well, you've got the highest income and the steadiest job, so I want it to be you. No, get back. I'm not going that way. So there was a lot of children being put out into the foster care, rather than a single mother have it and get welfare. The idea was that the child should go to people who had the financial resources to care for it and give it a good education and so on. And I know people who when they were 21, their foster parents, because they might be adopted as babies, their foster parents would tell them to look, there's something we need to tell you. We're actually not your parents. And this was devastating for some. Others sort of took it with a shrug. Others made out that it didn't affect them, but it actually did. And there are others who sort of didn't really care. But those were the dynamics of the time in the Western world, at least. So there was a shift in policy: get women into the workforce, take away the tax benefits for primary income earners, increase the cost of living through, especially cost of real estate, those sorts of things, rents, mortgages, and the like. And this changed the complete trajectory of Western society, so that the birth rate declined, and there was a consumer society where, why would I want to have children? Because then I can't afford to have my 6 foot wide flat screen TV and things like that. So change in attitudes to consumer goods versus family. Similarly, the heavy and intense propaganda which picked up over the time, which said to women that if you stay at home and have children, you're oppressed in the caged hell that is marriage, which is very much a Marxist sort of thing. And very much the Soviet communists did that as well in the 1930s, saying to women, look, you're chained to the kitchen by those evil oppressive men. Whereas why don't you go work in that nice dirt floor factory over there? You'll get treated like shit and screamed at by the boss, but that's liberating for you. And if you stay in the kitchen, you're being oppressed, chained, bound and gagged by those the patriarchy. And that same propaganda was used in the 1970s and 80s. In fact, still used today in the West to try and say to women, look, having children is it's the patriarchy. You have to fight back against that. You have to fight back against those damn fucking Nazis. Now, the opposite is the case in places like Ethiopia and Pakistan and parts of India and Afghanistan and parts of the Middle East and so on. There's been literal population explosions in these places. I mean, just Ethiopia as a case. Over the last 50 years, Ethiopia has been through so many civil wars and famines and fuck knows how much unrest. And you'd think it'd be impossible, given the amount of people that die there, impossible for the population to increase. Yet since 1970, the population of Ethiopia has increased by nearly 500%. Now, at the same time that the population of Germany has not increased at all, or increased by half of 1% or something. Has not increased at all. The population, and there's been no famines or anything like that in Germany. The population of Ethiopia has increased by nearly 500%, in spite of all the famines, the civil wars, and the endless strife and the carry on. I mean, it's almost inconceivable, and it shows you that these peasants, illiterate peasants living hand to mouth subsistence on a farm. The women are having 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 children apiece. And that's where the population growth is coming from. So every attempt at Western intervention to provide food, and look at those little starving babies, isn't it terrible? All that sort of stuff has drastically changed the natural organic cause and effect of populations in Africa. This is something that the white people, when they first arrived in Africa, noticed, that there were these incredible famines and wars and tribal warfare, and there would be mass deaths and starvations, and if there was a few years of drought, there would be tens of millions of people would starve, and the white people were absolutely shocked by this. Why don't these people have different crops? Why don't they organize irrigation? Why don't they take the steps necessary to prevent or at least limit these sort of mass deaths and starvations and so on? And so when the white people arrived, they stopped the tribal warfare, because it's bad for business. You can't do business if you are gangs of goons running around killing each other. So, as they did in India and Pakistan and everything like that. So the white people stopped the tribal warfare, or certainly limited it to a great extent. They put in the infrastructure, such as the irrigation, all that sort of stuff, and so brought modern medicine and the like. So the populations began to explode really as soon as the white people arrived, but they particularly exploded in the era since the United Nations got involved and thought, well, we can't allow any child in an illiterate peasant society where women are having 10 children apiece. We can't allow a society, we can't allow these kids to starve, so we have to engage in massive intervention with massive amounts of food. So that totally altered the natural balance of those societies. So again, you've got the 500% increase in population in 50 years, which seems stunning. The same thing in Afghanistan. We have 6 and 7 children per woman, or in Pakistan or other parts of the Middle East. So it's from all these places where the globalists are taking the surplus populations, and the surplus populations are colossal. There's no way these African states have got even the slightest chance of feeding that many people. So it's a never-ending treadmill of they get more aid and food, they have more children, which means much more aid, and double the amount of aid and food means they have then triple the amount of children, so on it goes. So it's totally out of control, and yet they're creating these surplus populations by artificial intervention, and then artificially intervening again to move these illiterate peasants to the West. I mean, could you imagine a bigger fuck up and a bigger, organised fuck up on a global scale? You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.